supposed to be started, we just have to.
But everybody must be in that Iron Man thing.
There probably are swimming right now.
Yeah.
I told Melanie I could finish that in no time. I get about 15 feet out. I'd be finished. I can't, you know. They should call me Rocky, but not because of my power, but because I can't swim. Just sink. Okay, we're on. And I imagine we're rolling here. So for those that are visiting on the internet, welcome to our Bible class this morning. We tend to run a little bit behind in the class, so we're just now getting started. We're glad you're with us. Good to see everybody else. And I'm sure in time we'll pick up people along the way as we're all adjusting to this new thing of being able to meet together on Sunday mornings before worship. It's a great thing. So we've been talking about decisions for several weeks, actually. And at this point, the author finally decides to do a recap in this book that I've been using kind of as my guide. And I want to do the same thing and have every time mention just the basics of what he says in the outset. That every decision we make bears on who we are today and what our characteristics and personalities like. That it's something that we don't stop and think about, but I can think of things. Grow up with a brother who was bigger than I was, and we had a great relationship. And as boys oftentimes do, it was tested by might, power, and strength, and wrestling and arguing and fighting with each other. He was only about 1.5 feet taller than me. He was 6 years older than me, and so obviously I was small for my age, and he was average height. So 6 years older, he was always bigger and stronger, always. There was no competition in it. He was kind in not killing me, basically, because when we fight, you know, but we'd still have our battles together. But those things that I went through tested my character, and I just passed it right on down to my younger sister. And so she says, "I'm tough today because of what you used to do to me." And but those are sideline things. What I'm talking about is everything we've gone through and the decisions we make to struggle or not to struggle, to run or to fight or to do whatever it is. Those decisions and everything else of where to go, what school to go to, who we choose to have as our friends, every bit of that, in essence, brings us to where you're at today. And so you're sitting in the pew today because of all of those decisions. And it doesn't mean that if you don't happen to be sitting in a pew today, you're bad, that some still coming in. Jimmy, good to see you. It's just who we are. But all of this composed together says this is who we are because of. And it just bears emphasizing that sometimes we take lightly small decisions which can affect us. And obviously, you know, like drive down the road when you're, you know, ready to fall asleep. One quick thing could make a major decision in your life. You could wind up in an accident, kill someone, be injured yourself that would affect your life. Those are things, but just the other things along the way. Everything. And they have significant consequences, and he says, and even affect our eternal destiny. So it's the importance of trying to realize that we have decisions to make. And one of the chapters talks about choosing good versus choosing evil, obviously. But he also adds to it, and I'm happy that he did, choosing excellence over mediocrity. And that is, I guess, a weakness within us as human beings. Americans, maybe, to some degree. Although I think there are some cultures that may push to excel more. I think the Asian culture, grade-wise, etc., seems to demonstrate that. But that doesn't mean that every one of us is like that. So whether we choose mediocrity or we choose excellence, we choose to be better than just average. We don't want to just float through. And so that was a strong emphasis from that chapter, and I think a very important one. And then it talked about Bible-based, God-glorifying decisions as you make each decision and you stop and think, you know, as the little bracelet that the young people wore for so long, WWJD, what would Jesus do? Does this glorify God or not? Is this what Jesus would be doing? And then so all of these things are chapters in the book that just keep reminding us that every day we make decisions, and every one of those things affect us in one way or another. So today, we're dealing with Matthew 7, verse 12, and that is the golden rule decisions. When I say that word, then you go, okay, I know what he's talking about. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. I've got an old ruler in my desk. I don't remember where I got it. Got it some years ago. And it's an old brownish looking old 1-foot ruler. And it's got the golden rule on it, emphasizing that. And we used to really strongly impress that on the kids, so much so that either they gave away or sold rulers way back when at a very cheap rate to impress upon ourselves. I don't know. What do you think? Is that something that seems to be a strongly educated thing within our society or our school? The golden rule. Is that something that's emphasized? Do you think it is? Some do. Some look like they're not too sure. You do at home, I'm sure. Especially when you have a boy and a girl growing up in the home. Miller said, you know, and Kinsley Ann probably picks on Tanner all the time. Although he's this much taller. You know, yeah, but I could see it. It's just kind of her personality. I was the same way. Size doesn't matter.
Out in the world today, a lot of it is the golden rule is he who has the gold makes the rule.
Okay. For those that may not have heard that online, the golden rule with a different angle looked at, he who has the gold is the one that rules. And that's thought of that way, it really is. That's not the one that Jesus is talking about. It's a different thing altogether. The golden rule is to do to others. It strongly affects our interpersonal relationships. And this is what the author is getting at. And he deals with this in a variety of different ways. Now, you may not have thought about the context with it. It's in the Sermon on the Mount, Matthew chapter 7, when Jesus says this. It's toward the conclusion. I don't know that that's the conclusion of a sermon, or was there an entire sermon on the golden rule. But he says, whatever you want men to do to you, do also to them. For, and the last part of that we kind of don't remember, for this is the law and the prophets. Now you think back to this major section of the Bible. Lay my notes down there for a second. There's the law and the prophets. Matthew 7:12, right there. It can be written 100 times in these pages. But it sums up what God has been telling his people to do with one another. It sums up what the prophets have been telling all the people of Israel that they had wrong, or that other nations had wrong, and not to be like them. And so there it is. If you want to know what the Old Testament's about, it's the golden rule. It sums up everything that's being said. There's one other passage that deals a whole lot with that when it talks about Christ's love, the greatest command. For this is the law and the prophets. All things hang on that. And I always talked about it's almost like a clothesline. There's two pillars hanging up. And everything that fits within what the Old Testament says can be hung on loving God and loving man. And if you got those 2 points, then everything else pulls together perfectly, which we struggle with, obviously. So we'll talk about that. And the first section he deals with, and I'm going to follow his theme in this, is the golden rule in business. And he emphasizes, I think, something that's true, that a lot of times we seem to compartmentalize our Christianity to church. And we might, among church friends, and then outside of that, we have a different set of rules. And you have to, in order to make it in society, in order to do business, a different set of rules is what a lot of people in this world say. But the application, I think, does fit. The golden rule in your business. What would that do if you, either as an employer or an employee, strictly practiced the golden rule, or as you're negotiating with fellow companies and stuff, and you're dealing with things that you're going to do, if you applied the golden rule, how would those people react? I'll throw it open.
Maybe surprised in some instances.
They'd be surprised. Who would be surprised? Throw out an example.
So you're dealing with there's no saying that you can't beat your customers up, you can't beat your employees up, so all you can beat up is your vendors. So
Let me repeat that. You can't beat your customers up, you can't beat your employees up, so all you can beat up is your vendors.
right.
Okay?
So when you're dealing
According to business standards.
right, so from a vendor standpoint, you can still drive hard on pricing or what the deal is, still do it very respectfully.
So you can do the things as a vendor respectfully, still.
And I think that you'll, in the end, will end up with actually more by treating them in a very professional but
Christian manner.
Absolutely.
Yeah. That you really treat them like, you expect others to do that. Okay.
And there's also those that take advantage of that.
In what way, Jimmy? What do you do for a living?
Well, I mean,
Construction.
You do want to do the right thing and everything, and they're just take. And, you're supposed to do what's right.
So when you're trying to do it as a contractor and you're for, say, someone that's wanting work done, they'll take advantage of you, but you're still going to do what's right.
We'll do what they want, even though it changes and
Are you saying that changes in construction are trouble for you? Yeah.
well, I'm just saying that some people take advantage of people's good nature.
Okay, yeah. Some people take advantage of others' good nature. They do.
But David, too, there is another saying that don't view my kindness as weakness.
Okay, good point. Don't view kindness as weakness. And that you have a limit on how you properly maintain things, but your kindness still comes through.
Right.
You could see that in the life of Jesus, could you not?
Absolutely.
In how he treated people, but he didn't back away from the law. So much so that one of the Pharisees who thought they were putting him on trial, when they challenged him, they said, "We know that you love men, but that you follow the law. What do you say about this?" And because they thought they had him. But they didn't. And he had a great answer for it, which kept the law and also still loved the people. And so there's a tight wire to walk, but it is maneuverable. But the point he's making here is what a difference it makes in all of this. That if you really consistently practice this, now he talks about aspects within this of honesty, integrity, and fairness in business. We're talking about practicing the golden rule, that's one of our decisions as we're talking about the basis of a class on decisions. So the golden rule is a rule that you use in your business and other things. We'll deal with other things, but just talking about integrity, fairness. You don't try to take advantage. You don't cut corners. You do a good job, even when it hurts. And you keep doing those things. If you're a business person, when you practice those things as an employee or an employer, or you're working with other people in public or vendors or whoever it is, the word gets out that this person lives this way. There's a business out there, and if I coin the phrase, I'll throw it out here in a second, you know what business I'm talking about. But when you go in to buy something, when they get through, you'll say thank you, and they'll say, it's my pleasure. And that's a coined phrase that they use at Chick-fil-A. Everybody knows it.
Rich Carlton.
Yeah, but he's impressed on these people the value of being treated nicely and not backing away from it. And not backing away from Christian principles, so much so that it frustrates those that are anti-Christian. But he just goes ahead and does anyway. But he's the first one out there giving food away at hurricanes and doing all these things. And he's known for all these things because it's just that principle. You treat other people like they want to be treated. And he does so. And the book here mentions a company that I didn't know about. I mean, I heard of the company before. Have you all ever heard of J.C. Penney? Yeah, of course. Have you ever heard of the Golden Rule stores? J.C. Penney, when he started his business out, according to what's written here, and the guy quotes his sources and all, says that the title of the store was not J.C. Penney. He didn't want it named after him. He wanted to name it after the principle that he wanted him to realize and remember, and that everybody else would. So it was called the Golden Rule Store. That everybody that walked in that store looked up and said, the Golden Rule Store. You will be treated this way. As employees would be treating the customers that way, and one another. And he said that the company flourished because of that principle. Eventually, I'm not sure the causes of it all, but he gave way and renamed the store J.C. Penney. But it must have been way back when, before my life, that J.C. Penney was also the Golden Rule Store. And really did a tremendous impact with marketing and other things of selling over the internet. They eventually lost out. So I guess they're connected still somewhere in the U.S. in some ways, but not like it used to be. But it was the place that everybody always shopped. Go to J.C. Penney's. Fair, whatever, balanced prices on all kinds of things. The Golden Rule. Okay, anything more about that as far as it relates to business? If not, we'll shift application to another category. Golden Rule applied to personal boundaries. This fellow here deals very specifically in more of a, I guess if he was thinking of his book being written, writing the book as he's writing it, would think that there'd be a lot of single people involved in it on this. And he talks about the moral implications of a single person and the drive in this society to sexual immodesty or morality, etc., and just how it goes back and forth. And he said that golden rule, as a young man is dating a girl, to stop and think about what you are looking for in a wife, or the woman, what you are looking for in the husband, would cause you to stop and think, how do you relate to that person? How do you press boundaries or not press boundaries, and how you deal with one another about the moral values, and how you're looking to have a mate eventually who is completely moral and upright. And yet, dealing with dating, he talks about, do we really practice that in our society? And of course, overall, no. But when you get down to the person you want to say I do with, you do want the golden rule applied. That I do means I do commit to you and you do commit to me. I'm expecting that you'll love me really better than anybody else, and in the golden rule. There was an older preacher back some time ago that was at a lectureship, and he was defining terms or whatever, and he talked about this idea of what he was saying to young men. He says, young men, he says, be a one-woman man with your eyes, with your thoughts, and with your body. Now that's more than just the action now, but he's talking about this general, I'm not sure the way you behave with people, flirtatious ways, allowing yourself to just lean in certain directions, and the implications that you kind of throw out there. And you know what I'm talking about.
Be misinterpreted.
Or interpreted that way because you want it to be interpreted that way. Misinterpreted would be your defense, that you hear a lot of times. I didn't mean that. I don't know how they got that. It must be misinterpreted, as we hear a lot of times after people are caught. Although it's kind of strange that the executive goes in, invites the girl into his office because he wants to talk to her about things, and locks the door and closes the blinds, and she leaves later saying, well, he tried to do something. Well, one person, who knows what they're up to. But if there's a consistent number of people that keep saying this, or about a woman, either way, misinterpretation is probably out of the picture. But nonetheless, it's that golden rule. How do you relate to people, and how do you make them feel? Are they comfortable with you? And so he talks about that in our society. And so I just mention it because it's one of the categories he throws out here. But unless there's some reaction to that, I want to move on to another one that we could spend a little more time with. Okay, good. The golden rule in our speech. And there's one that we all have to practice every day. We talk to people. We talk to our spouses, with our friends, our neighbors, people we work with, people at church, wherever we go. Unless you don't talk at all, you talk. And that concept of how you treat people with your speech. And I get educated on this all the time, and rightfully so. I don't stop and think, I'm talking about for my wife more than anything else, about how to be a little bit nicer and kinder and not as formal on the phone. Somehow there's something about the phone and the car that turns a guy into a real formal machine. You finish your matter, thank you, bye, and hang up. And so we had a phone call last night, and it was some old family friends. People that used to take Melanie on vacation when she was a little girl because they didn't have any children and they wanted to have a child go. So can you imagine inviting somebody else from some other? They did this. And so she was their adopted daughter until a son came along later in life. And they were the ones that arranged and set up our wedding, decorated all this stuff, took care of all the things, and besides all these other things. And so they've been around for a long time. So he called up and wanted to know if we'd have lunch after church today, just old family friends. Well, how's everything going? And he talking, how's Melanie, how's this? And Melanie's whispering, ask how they're doing. I'm just answering questions, Yeah. And I'm thinking, yeah, I should. Do unto others. They're doing it to me. How are things with you? But it's that telephone, and I guess we all get in our modes once in a while. I don't know where you do, but treating people. Thoughts on that? How do you relate? How are you taught, Darlene?
It's not only what we say, it can also be what we write. Whatever we write down in a text.
Oh, what we write in a
Yes.
text. True. Not just the words, but the things we communicate, writing, texting.
To remember to apply it to that also, that you're
True.
going to be held accountable for whatever.
There's a lot of communicating going on with those little operating devices. We call it a telephone, and it's everything under the sun. Which, by the way, I got a text here, answered to a question earlier. Robin Large had asked me to pray for her uncle. I'm going to double check what's going on here. Anyway, Lance Davis was taken to the hospital, and they're going to be operating on him today. He's diverticulitis, okay? And so at the end of class, when we have a prayer, if Chris, if you would lead a prayer at the end of class, remember particularly that family, Lance, with their surgery and all. But anyway, so speech and dialogue and texting, etc., on those things. And so that when can you be misinterpreted on texting? Easily. Good answer. I was hoping for that. Especially if you're not, when I'm sending text back and forth and I'll send something to Rush, he gives me something that's so perfectly worded. And I look at it and go, wish I could write like that. You know, it's just, but not everybody does. And then you're looking at cultures and personalities and all these other things that get thrown in. And some clever guy, I think it was from the Asian region years ago, came up with a basic thing of emojis because he was writing stuff to somebody in English, but he wasn't sure if they really understood what he was saying. So he put a little face like, I don't understand. He'd draw the face. I hope I'm using the right English, he'd be thinking. So he put a face with to help explain what he was meaning behind it. And so little emojis have grown into this vast thing for those that text. You start looking at this long array of things you can plug in, from faces looking hard to sunshine to stars to halos and everything else under the sun, to communicate in texting. Because we do struggle with that. And but especially thinking about what you say about other people, either in texting. Kids do this a lot on Facebook. There's a lot of things happening that we talk about what's the word? Being bullish, being a bully with your words and beating down people. And I guess that's never been I hope a temptation for me. You tell me if it is, if you're hearing me that. But it does seem somewhat prevalent in our society, one way or another, to pick on people, to put down people, to say this, do that, whatever. When you see something good happening, somebody else got to throw into that construction something negative. Well, but you know, that's because it's like, do unto others.
David, I think too that the digital communication has created some real monsters out there too, and how faceless, nameless people can sit in front of a computer or a phone or an iPad and just start railing on someone.
Right.
They don't even know, and how that just gets ramped up to a level of, I mean, why are you acting like this? I think part of it is because you're anonymous.
Okay, now for those watching on the internet might not have heard that we're talking about how things can be really accelerated on the internet, and things can be said so far out of hand because it's the principle of you feel like you're anonymous and nobody knows. Question is, are you anonymous? Well, no, everybody, I mean, you can track them down. No, Darlene says, nobody's anonymous. You know, somebody sent a text some time ago, you know, and signed it anonymous. It's like, you know who it's from, it's right there. Your phone number's on there. If you aren't a friend with the person and you're in their catalog, still they know you've got your number. You're not anonymous. But yet somehow we feel that way. Here's the thing is, what does it do for you as a Christian to act in that way? How does it make other people who's reading that also? And they look down and they see that. They don't respond, but there, as many as don't respond, there's probably, I don't know, 10 more that that see it, that don't say a word, but are just as surprised, shocked, bothered by that kind of wording. I look at a few around and I think, really? That person, I know them, they write like that.
I would add one more to the gentleman's comment. There's also a lack of do unto others, I think, is a really good way to base this. There's a lack of just simple social skills.
Yeah.
Greeting someone when they enter the room and saying hello. That's kind of, I find it over the past 20 or 30 years, I think, lost. I don't know if people are just not being taught, or it's this new form of communication coming from electronic.
Okay, for the internet here, for those that might be watching, the great voice. I wish I had that deep, powerful voice you've got. But nonetheless, talking for those that may not have gotten it all, the lack of social skills of greeting someone when they come into the room, and just that respectful, it goes back to biblical ways. Rise before the gray-haired man. And that's a principle that God's telling. There's a respect that we owe to a certain age group, but then generally speaking to everybody else that's getting lost. We have, I can remember parents or watching parents, you know, and you've got a little one, you're saying, now say hi to this friend, you know, they're hiding. Please say hi. You're educating them. Be respectful because you're trying to interact with those people. So this whole idea of our speech and doing something, what it does is it says something about us as individuals. Hello, Arch. Good to see you, Joe. Do unto others is what we're talking about in a matter of deciding how we live. And doing others in that matter of speech is the subtitle within that. How we react, treat, or talk about other people. And the tremendously important thing is to realize that we're on trial, not exactly, but we're on the judgment seat at any time when we speak. I am right now. And the fact that I know that every word I choose, which is not always that great, because I'm not that craftsman of words that I'd like to be, is being judged kindly by my friends who understand he's not going to give us the perfect word, but it's going to be close enough that we can figure it out or guess it. But nonetheless, we're looking toward some type of mutual understanding with one another that says, with our speech, we have gracious words that demonstrate that I'm trying to do to you, building you up, like I hope to be built up in the same way, back and forth. And the same thing is said just about how we live in other ways. Okay. Got about 7 or 8 minutes left.
Talking about social media, it's so easy to not do this. Let all bitterness, wrath, anger, clamor, and evil speaking be put away from you. With all malice, be kind to one another, tender-hearted, forgiving one another, even as God. There's so many arguments and fighting going on, and it just enrages people more and more, and then back and forth, and it's to the point of, I was one of those people that would flare up something, and I got off social media for about 3 or 4 years because I couldn't handle myself. I'm back on there now, but I don't post, I hardly post anything. I catch myself wanting to say something about somebody's post, and then I decide that's not the way I need to do. I just assume just skip over it and ignore it. But I was guilty of all that.
Okay, tell me where you were reading from there. Ephesians what?
Ephesians
4,
31.
30 and 31?
31.
31 and 32, I think, where it talks about being kinder, tender-hearted.
Yes.
The opposites. Yeah, let all bitterness, wrath, clamor, bitter speaking, I can't remember the details specifically.
Bitterness, wrath, anger, clamor, evil speaking.
Evil speaking.
Away from-
Be away from you. So you got to get rid of what Paul is saying here by inspiration from God. You got to get rid of the garbage before you can plant good words in there, because they don't mix well. Gardens don't grow well when they got lots of weeds in there. It just doesn't come out. And it's the same way in our hearts. So it's a hard thing to deal with all of these. The thing is that we deal in a society that doesn't do that. And then you're faced on the multimedia, the text, the internet, and all that. Do I respond? And the whole thing's on the page, and people are throwing this out, and they're looking for somebody. And I have an old friend who occasionally throws out some stuff, usually politically minded, but not always. And he'll say, "What about that, Dave Schoenhoff?" It's like, whoa! I hadn't even been following him, but he's still a very good friend of mine. But I knew him back when I first went to Freed Harden, before I even met Melanie. So we've been friends a long time. But we're walking close to the same path, but sometimes he's a little tougher than I am. So he sticks me in the middle of this fire and says, "Think on that one," and challenges me. And I have to be careful how I choose my words.
Tell him to give you a call and you'll talk to him about it.
He would.
Well,
Yeah.
you don't have to respond.
Yeah, so you don't do it on the media. That's true. But some people want to respond on the media, and they don't carefully choose their words. Then they start a fire, which is going to cause response, and all their friends jump on, and so it just grows. And the whole time I observe this, you observe this, you're watching this going on and going, that one over here is a Christian, and why are they acting this way? And I think of words, something like what Paul Faulkner wrote when he talked about making things right when things go wrong, a book that came out of a video series. But the phrase he said, when you start getting in an argument with someone like that, that's going to always have some more to throw back in your face. And I'll never forget the illustration. And I even remember he said that his wife hated him using it. He said, once you use it, you'll never forget it. You can't out-puke a buzzard. So if you're arguing with a buzzard, don't think that you're going to gain with better words or whatever. You can't out-puke a buzzard. And then, okay, Mary Jane, I understand. But that's the principle. If you throw it out there, what was it? Someone very close to me says, never try to teach a pig to sing. You only waste your time and you annoy the pig. So there's a kinder, softer way of saying it. But it all has to do with our speech. Greeting people when they walk in the building. Visitors. Gracious words. You've been out visiting and you're walking in a building and you're wondering, where do I go? And occasionally I've walked in and can't even get past the front door people before they're talking. Where are you headed? Where are you from? We're having class right now. Where would you like to go? We have this class and this class. And I'm feeling so welcomed in there and so nicely treated. And that's a good way of communicating to those that are foreigners because they're visiting what's going on. It goes in a lot of different ways. So, okay. There's a couple more sections, and we're not going to get to cover everything, but one of the things I'm going to mention and move right on, but he talks about speech. He talks about spreading the gospel, doing unto others. Because someone has helped teach you, and there are some that you know that need teaching, need directing, need guidance, using your speech in a proper way. Do unto those that, like you would like to be done if you're outside, to be able to understand the value of the gospel and the joys of Christian living that's out there. Not that you're beating the person down, but you're giving them an opportunity. The last one is giving. Do unto others in matters of giving. James chapter 1, verse 27. He starts off with, he talks about pure and undefiled religion before the Father is this too. Anybody remember the rest of it? Visit the widows and the orphans in their affliction. And it's not just drop by and say, hi, but it has a tendency or an application of make sure they're taken care of. That visiting, that principle that's you're there to do what you would want to have done for you if you are in a needy situation. You know people in needy situations? What categories of need do we find today?
Basic needs.
Basic needs, food needs,
Clothing, water. Just,
Clothing, water.
Just absolute, shelter, just money for basic necessities, and that's just the base.
basic necessities, survival, just food, just housing, companionship. You know, crank the clock back to July of last year or August, where you couldn't get out, you couldn't go anywhere, and you were needing, at least feeling, kind of empty inside. And how valuable it was, that is quarter after, to communicate, to give to those people who struggle on not having those things. I know the bell just rung. I want to mention, as far as some very basics here, that I am still getting reports almost daily from Surrey in India on needs that they have there. We talked about basics. I have not been taking up a contribution in this class, although Arch had started this some time ago, and the work in India began because of what Arch did. And so if you're interested in putting something in the pot today, see Arch. But every day I'm hearing of they're needing food that they know can be packaged and handed out that they know is not infected by all the people that have COVID there. 4 days ago, somebody died in his family because of COVID. Last week, someone else died. During that time, one of the preachers that we supported lost his wife because of COVID. Now, an extra little thing is we talk about communicating. Surrey speaks English very well. And I've got his email address. And if you're interested in writing him, he could use some encouragement. So we're going to have a prayer, and then we'll close class. Good to see you guys. Sorry we're running a tiny bit long. Just hang in here with us. Chris?
Let's pray. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for this day. We thank you for another opportunity to come, learn another portion of thy word, Father. We thank you for everyone who's here. We send up a special prayer for Lance Davis and his family. Be with all of his family as he is going through some difficult times. We ask that you help us, help the family, comfort them, guide them. Father, we thank you for giving us guidance and our choices to come worship you, Father. We thank you for this class. Thank you for David.